Sophia had always been careful at work, keeping her distance from her boss's personal life, respecting boundaries, and never letting curiosity get the better of her. But when Mr. Harrison asked her to drive his son Adrian home from the airport, she felt a mix of nervousness and intrigue, unsure what to expect from a young man she had only seen at family events and in passing at the office. Someone who seemed polite but distant, someone who carried himself with a quiet confidence that made him seem untouchable yet interesting. And as she approached the sleek black car waiting at the terminal, she felt her heart beat a little faster, adjusting her bag strap and rehearsing small talk in her head, wondering if she should ask about his trip or keep it casual and safe. And when Adrian stepped out of the car, tall, well-dressed, with a calm yet thoughtful expression, she realized he was even more striking up close, not just in appearance but in the aura of someone who had seen the world in ways others hadn't. And as he opened the door and slid into the passenger seat, he gave a polite smile that felt genuine but reserved, and the first moments of silence were heavy with unspoken questions, Sophia gripping the steering wheel a little tighter, trying to think of something to say, anything to break the tension, while Adrian stared out the window, his profile outlined by the airport lights, and for a long moment, the city seemed to fade, leaving just the hum of the car and the soft breathing of two people suddenly aware of each other in a new, intimate way. And then he spoke, quietly at first, almost as if testing the waters, saying, "It's always strange coming back here after being away. Everything feels the same, yet somehow different." And Sophia, surprised by the vulnerability in his tone, nodded, offering a small smile, unsure if he wanted conversation or just space. And then she ventured, "Was your trip good?" And he shrugged, a subtle movement, and said, "Good, but lonely. I thought I'd enjoy the time, but being surrounded by people who expect things from you all the time, it's exhausting." And Sophia felt a pang in her chest because she recognized the honesty in his words, the unguarded confession that few people ever let slip. And she realized that behind the polite, composed exterior, Adrian carried weight, burdens she couldn't fully imagine, but could sense. And as they drove past the quiet streets, the car weaving through traffic under streetlights that reflected off the windows, she began to notice the little things, the way he fidgeted with his hands, the subtle tension in his shoulders, the way his gaze lingered on nothing in particular, lost in thought. And she felt a curiosity growing inside her, a desire to understand him, to see beyond the carefully maintained image he presented to the world. And then he glanced at her briefly, eyes meeting hers for a fleeting moment that seemed to stretch longer than it should. And in that glance, she caught a glimpse of vulnerability, a hint of longing, a spark of something unspoken that made her heart flutter unexpectedly. And she realized she had underestimated him, judged him based on appearances and assumptions. And now, sitting in this car with him, she saw a depth she hadn't anticipated, a human being struggling quietly with loneliness and expectation. And her mind raced with questions she dared not voice aloud, afraid of crossing the invisible lines that separated them. And yet, the car felt like a private bubble where those lines were softer, blurred by the intimacy of the road, the hum of tires against asphalt, the soft glow of streetlights. And she couldn't help but wonder what it would be like to talk more, to know more, to reach into that quiet space and connect with him in a way that was more than polite conversation. And Adrian, sensing her curiosity perhaps, sighed softly, a sound filled with both resignation and relief, and said, almost in a whisper, "Sometimes I think people look at me and see what they want, not who I really am, and it's exhausting." And Sophia, moved by the confession, felt an unusual warmth, a desire to comfort, to acknowledge his feelings without judgment. And she nodded gently, keeping her hand steady on the wheel, saying softly, "I can listen if you want. You don't have to carry it alone." And Adrian's eyes met hers again, this time longer, and she saw something shift, a small flicker of trust, an openness that surprised her, because she hadn't expected this from someone so seemingly reserved. And the conversation continued, haltingly at first, with pauses filled with unspoken understanding, each word careful yet honest. And as the city passed by, the lights reflecting off the windows like fleeting stars, she realized the ordinary car ride had become extraordinary, a window into a side of Adrian few ever saw. And she felt her pulse quicken, not just from curiosity but from something warmer, a gentle pull she hadn't anticipated, a connection that was fragile but real. And as they drove through quieter streets, lined with autumn trees shedding golden leaves that drifted like memories on the wind. Adrian spoke again, this time about his childhood, about the pressure to succeed, the loneliness of being watched, the subtle but constant expectations, and Sophia listened, captivated, her heart aching for him, understanding more with every word, sensing the weight he carried, the vulnerability beneath his composed exterior, and yet, despite the heaviness of his confessions, there was a softness, a charm, a sense of humor in the way he recounted small stories, moments of his life that were ordinary yet poignant, making her laugh quietly, making the car feel warmer, more intimate, a shared space where two people were slowly letting down their guards, and in those moments, Sophia realized that something had shifted within her, a recognition that Adrian was no longer just the son of her boss, no longer a distant, polished figure she observed from afar, but someone real, someone she could connect with, someone who made her heart stir in ways she hadn't expected, and as they approached a stoplight, she noticed the subtle tension in his jaw, the way his fingers tapped lightly against his leg, the quiet sighs he didn't try to hide, and she felt an urge to reach out, to offer reassurance, but held herself back, respecting the boundaries of their situation, and yet, the intimacy of this shared ride, the confessions, the quiet understanding, left her thinking, imagining, wondering, and longing for more moments like this, moments where words could flow, hearts could open, and connections could be made without judgment or expectation. And as the traffic moved and the city lights blurred past, Sophia realized that this ride was more than a trip, it was the beginning of a shift, a subtle, emotional awakening, a recognition that people, even those who seem untouchable, carry depths unseen, stories unshared, and vulnerabilities that can surprise and touch those willing to see. And she glanced at Adrian again, his profile serene yet thoughtful, and felt an unexpected warmth, a gentle pull toward understanding, toward care, toward something undefined yet undeniable. And as they drove on, the silence returned. But it was different now, no longer awkward, filled instead with anticipation, with unspoken understanding, with a promise that perhaps, the next word, the next confession, the next shared thought could change everything. And in that quiet, moving car, Sophia understood that ordinary moments can hold extraordinary revelations, that connections can form in the briefest of encounters, and that one unexpected car ride could change the way she saw someone forever, leaving her heart open, curious, and quietly, irresistibly moved. As the car left the bright lights of the city behind and slipped into quieter streets lined with early evening shadows, Sophia found herself leaning a little closer to the wheel, still processing the unexpected openness Adrian had shown during the first part of their drive, his words lingering in her mind. And now, with the hum of the tires on the asphalt and the faint scent of autumn in the air, he began to speak again, softly at first, about the layers of his life, the things no one at the office or in polite company ever seemed to notice, how growing up under the weight of expectations from every direction had shaped him in ways that were invisible but heavy, how smiles and laughter often masked a deep sense of loneliness. And Sophia listened intently, feeling a strange mixture of empathy, fascination, and a warmth she couldn't name, the car suddenly feeling like a small sanctuary where truth could be spoken without judgment. And she realized that this young man, whom she had always seen from a distance as polished and reserved, was remarkably human, filled with fears, desires, regrets, and moments of quiet doubt that no one ever acknowledged. And as he spoke about the constant pressure to perform, to appear perfect in front of the world, his voice wavered, just slightly, enough to show her the cracks in his carefully maintained exterior, and Sophia felt her heart tighten, sensing that this rare vulnerability was a gift, a glimpse into a side of Adrian no one else saw, a side that made him more real, more relatable, and somehow more magnetic. And she wondered how it was possible that someone could carry such weight yet move through the world with the effortless charm and confidence that he did. And as the car rolled past streetlights casting long, golden shadows, she noticed the subtle gestures that accompanied his words, the way his fingers drummed lightly on his lap, the occasional flick of his gaze toward her, as if seeking a quiet acknowledgement that she was listening, truly listening. And she wanted to offer that, a sense of understanding, a reassurance that he was not alone, that she saw him, that she cared, but the words felt heavy, delicate, too intimate for the first moments of connection, so she remained silent, letting the rhythm of the conversation flow naturally. And then Adrian spoke of friendships lost, of bonds that faded under misunderstanding or neglect, of people who left when they realized he couldn't be what they wanted him to be, and Sophia felt a pang of sorrow, recognizing the universality of loss, even in lives that appeared privileged, and she thought about her own small heartbreaks, her quiet disappointments, and the strange, unspoken parallel between them, the way people hide their pain behind polite smiles and careful words, and in that moment, the car seemed suspended in time, a cocoon of honesty where the world outside, the city, the noise, the expectations, melted away, leaving just two people, human and fragile, connecting through conversation. And she found herself daring to ask gently, "Do you ever feel like you can be yourself around anyone?" And Adrian's eyes met hers briefly, a flicker of surprise, then a soft, almost sad smile, and he said, "Not really. People expect you to fit into their idea of who you are, and if you don't, they step back, or worse, they judge." And Sophia felt her chest tighten, moved by the quiet courage it took to admit such things, and as the car continued, he shared more, small stories of family dinners, conversations that never happened, moments where he had wanted to speak but didn't, dreams he had quietly shelved because they didn't fit the plan, and with each revelation, Sophia felt herself drawn deeper into his world, understanding that beneath the calm exterior was a heart that longed for acceptance, understanding, and connection, the very things she, too, sought in her life. And as the road curved through neighborhoods glowing with the soft light of early evening, Adrian paused, his gaze on the passing trees, and said quietly, "Sometimes I wonder if anyone would really notice if I just disappeared for a while, if anyone would care." And Sophia's heart skipped, not from fear but from the intensity of the emotion in his words, and she wanted to reach out, to say that she cared, that she understood, that she saw him as more than just the son of her boss, but the words remained unspoken, hovering in the air like fragile glass, delicate and powerful, and she realized that in this shared space, the car, the movement, the quiet intimacy of listening and speaking, something rare and meaningful was forming, a bond forged in honesty and vulnerability, and she felt her own emotions stir, the warmth in her chest growing, a mixture of compassion, intrigue, and a subtle, unacknowledged attraction that surprised her. And Adrian, sensing perhaps her quiet attention, shifted slightly, leaning back, his voice softer now, tinged with relief, saying, "I don't usually talk about these things, not like this, not with someone I barely know, but it's easier here, in this moment, with you." And Sophia, moved by the trust implicit in his words, offered a gentle smile, not forced, not rehearsed, but real, a small acknowledgement of understanding, and she noticed the way his eyes lingered on her for a fleeting moment, a spark of connection that made her pulse quicken, a sensation both thrilling and unsettling because it was unexpected, delicate, yet undeniable. And as the car passed a row of trees with leaves dancing in the soft breeze, Adrian began to speak of his own failures, his quiet regrets, the chances he had missed because he feared judgment, the paths he had avoided because they seemed too risky or too unconventional, and Sophia listened, fascinated by the honesty, the raw emotion, the human fragility beneath the polished surface, and she realized that she had been wrong to assume she knew him, to reduce him to the polite, distant figure she had seen at work or family gatherings, because here, in this quiet ride, she saw someone real, someone vibrant and sensitive, someone whose inner life was rich, complicated, and deeply moving. And with each word, with each pause, with each quiet revelation, her heart opened a little more, a tender empathy mingling with the strange, gentle pull of attraction, not crude or overt, but subtle, like a soft current beneath the surface of calm water. And Adrian, noticing her attention, allowed himself a brief smile, a hint of humor in the way he recalled childhood memories, small incidents that were both ordinary and revealing, stories that showed his intelligence, his wit, his self-awareness. And Sophia laughed softly, feeling the car warm with a quiet intimacy, a sense that they were sharing something rare, fleeting, and precious, and she marveled at the complexity of human emotion, at the way connection could form in unexpected spaces, in brief moments, and she realized she wanted to know more, to continue this conversation, to explore the layers of Adrian's heart and mind. But the road ahead was uncertain, the destination approaching, and the reality of social boundaries pressed gently against the budding connection, reminding her that this ride was temporary, yet leaving her heart lingering on possibilities. And as they drove past the quiet streets, Adrian fell silent for a moment, staring out the window, the fading light catching his thoughtful expression, and Sophia felt an ache of longing, a wish to speak, to reach across the space between them, to acknowledge the depth of feeling stirring unexpectedly in both of them. And then he whispered, almost to himself, "It's strange how one person can make you feel seen when no one else does." And Sophia's chest tightened at the words, a shiver of emotion running through her, because she realized he wasn't speaking of her explicitly, and yet, in that shared silence, the sentiment resonated, an invisible thread connecting them, fragile, tender, and real. And as the car rolled on, the streetlights reflecting in the windows like fleeting stars, Sophia felt the ride transform from a simple obligation into an emotional journey, a delicate unfolding of hearts, and she wondered, not for the first time, if she had underestimated the power of listening, the importance of empathy, the magic of an unexpected moment where two souls could meet. Quietly, honestly, and without pretense, and she knew that what began as a mundane drive home was becoming something far more meaningful, a shared experience that would linger in memory, a gentle awakening to emotions she had not anticipated. And as the trees passed in the soft glow of evening painted shadows on Adrian's thoughtful face, she felt a quiet, tender connection, a sense that the next words, the next shared story, could deepen the bond. And in that moment, with the hum of the car, the soft light, the gentle autumn air, Sophia realized that the simple act of listening, of being present, had allowed her to see Adrian in a completely new way, not as a distant figure, not as her boss's son, but as a complex, sensitive, and deeply human young man, someone whose heart and mind she now longed to understand. And though the ride was far from over, and though social rules and boundaries loomed in the near distance, she felt a thrill of anticipation, a flutter of emotion, and a quiet hope that this journey, both literal and emotional, was only the beginning of something rare, meaningful, and unforgettable. The car moved through quiet streets, the evening darkening around them, and Sophia felt the tension shift in the air. A subtle electricity she could not name, a sense that the conversation had crossed an invisible line into something more intimate, more personal, and Adrian, sitting beside her, seemed lighter now, more willing to let the layers of himself show, and he began to speak about things he rarely shared, about moments of loneliness and longing, the small heartbreaks of life that accumulate quietly beneath the surface, the way he sometimes watched the world through a lens of isolation, feeling both apart from and a part of the people around him. And Sophia listened, enthralled, her attention fixed on the gentle rise and fall of his voice, on the expressions that flickered across his face, the almost imperceptible shifts that revealed the humanity behind the composed exterior. And she realized that she was no longer seeing him as the son of her boss, or as a figure defined by wealth or status, but as a real person, vulnerable and relatable, someone whose emotions mirrored her own in subtle ways. And as the tires hummed against the road, he shared stories of fleeting friendships, of connections that had dissolved because others couldn't understand the person he truly was, of moments when he longed to be accepted without having to conform to expectations. And Sophia felt her chest tighten, her heart swelling with empathy, an urge to comfort, to reach across the invisible barrier and say that he was seen, that he was understood. And though words failed her, the silence between them carried its own meaning, a tender acknowledgement that something rare was forming, a connection neither had expected but both felt growing stronger with every passing mile. And then he turned slightly, glancing at her with eyes that held a mix of curiosity, vulnerability, and a quiet intensity, and said, "You know, most people don't really hear me. They listen, maybe, but they don't understand, and it's exhausting." And Sophia felt a flutter in her chest, realizing that in this moment she was different for him, that her attention, her quiet presence, mattered in a way that few others did, and she wanted to tell him that, to bridge the gap between them. But she held her words carefully, letting her expressions speak in their place, the slight nods, the gentle smiles, the warmth in her gaze. And he noticed, because the corners of his lips lifted ever so slightly, a signal of trust, of recognition, of comfort found in unexpected company. And the road continued, winding past soft glows of streetlights and the occasional distant car. Yet the world outside seemed secondary to the small bubble of connection within the car, a private universe where honesty could flourish, where walls could fall, and where hearts could start to stir in ways neither had anticipated. And Adrian, sensing perhaps her quiet attention, allowed himself to lean back, voice softer now, tinged with something between amusement and longing, recounting memories from childhood, moments of discovery and small triumphs overshadowed by expectations, moments of first love lost, of dreams quietly abandoned. And as Sophia listened, her pulse quickened, a warmth spreading through her chest, a gentle awareness that these shared moments, these confessions, were shifting something inside her, a quiet recognition of emotion she hadn't expected, an attraction subtle but undeniable, a connection growing in the spaces between words, in the pauses, in the silent understanding that spoke louder than any sentence. And he laughed softly at one story, a sound so genuine it made her heart flutter, a brief, intoxicating reminder of the human behind the composed exterior, and she smiled back, feeling the thrill of mutual recognition, of being seen and acknowledged, and she realized that the car ride, which had begun as a simple task, had transformed into an emotional journey, a slow unraveling of layers, a gentle opening of hearts, and she wanted to ask him more, to know him better, to understand the fears and desires he rarely shared, yet the words hovered, fragile and tender, unspoken but heavy with possibility. And then Adrian's tone shifted, quieter, more serious, almost vulnerable in a way that made her lean in just slightly, careful not to breach the invisible boundaries, yet unable to resist the pull of curiosity and empathy. And he said, "Sometimes I think people only see the surface, and they miss everything underneath, everything that makes me, me." And Sophia's heart tightened, recognizing the universal longing to be truly seen, and she wanted to reach across the space between them, to assure him that she did see, that she understood, that she cared. But instead she allowed the silence to speak, to hold the weight of acknowledgement, and he seemed to feel it, because a faint smile curved his lips, a small, fragile sign of trust, and the connection deepened, subtle but undeniable, a bond forming in the quiet spaces of the ride, in the shared glances, in the gentle nods, in the soft laughter and heartfelt confessions. And as the car glided past softly lit houses and quiet streets, Adrian spoke again, voice almost hesitant, filled with emotion, revealing the depth of his inner world, the secret longings he had kept hidden, the small regrets that weighed on him, the quiet wishes for understanding and closeness. And Sophia felt a gentle ache in her chest, a longing to reach out, to comfort, to offer reassurance, and she realized that her own heart was stirring in ways she had not anticipated, responding to his vulnerability, his honesty, his quiet charm. And in that moment, the car felt suspended in time, a small world where the outside noise, the expectations, the professional and social boundaries, all faded away, leaving only two people, hearts open, connecting through words, silences, and glances. And Adrian, sensing the emotional weight of the moment, allowed a rare softness to emerge in his voice, sharing not just pain but also hope, a wish for connection, a desire to be understood and accepted. And Sophia felt her chest tighten, a flutter of warmth and tenderness spreading, a recognition that she too wanted the same, a quiet, unspoken longing that mirrored his. And she realized that something delicate, fragile, and precious was taking shape, a mutual recognition of feelings too early to name, too intense to ignore, and yet restrained, careful, respectful of the boundaries that life imposed. And as the streetlights flickered past, illuminating Adrian's thoughtful expression, she saw a side of him that was raw, human, beautiful in its vulnerability. And she knew she was witnessing something few ever saw, a true glimpse into the heart of a young man shaped by expectation yet yearning for understanding. And the car continued, carrying them both through quiet streets and soft shadows, a moving cocoon of emotion where the ordinary became extraordinary, where a simple drive became a journey into hearts and minds. And Sophia felt her own emotions swell, a mixture of empathy, intrigue, and gentle attraction that both surprised and delighted her. And she realized that this ride was no longer just a task, but a delicate, emotional dance, a slow unfolding of trust and connection, a subtle awakening to feelings she could not yet name. And Adrian, sensing perhaps the tension and warmth between them, offered a small, almost shy smile, a sign that he too felt the growing closeness, the quiet bond that had formed. And Sophia, heart racing, allowed herself a gentle smile in return, a silent acknowledgement of what was blossoming, something unspoken but profoundly present, a connection that would linger long after the car stopped, that would echo in memory, tender, delicate, and real. And as the tires hummed against the pavement, the quiet intimacy between them deepened, words and silences weaving together, emotions intertwining, a gentle, romantic, dramatic current flowing through the small space, and Sophia understood, with a thrill of anticipation, that this unexpected conversation, these rare moments of honesty, might change the way she saw Adrian forever, not just as the son of her boss, not just as a young man she had once thought she knew, but as someone entirely new, someone alive with emotion, longing, vulnerability, and the potential for a connection that was quietly, irresistibly magnetic, and she realized, with both excitement and trepidation, that the rest of the drive could hold even more revelations, more closeness, more moments that might deepen the bond in ways neither could fully predict, leaving her heart open, her mind alert, and her emotions tangled in a tender, complicated, beautiful anticipation for what was yet to come. The car slowed as they neared Adrian's home, a quiet neighborhood lined with tall trees that swayed gently in the evening breeze, and Sophia felt a mix of anticipation and reluctance, a tug at her heart that she could not ignore, because the journey that had begun as a simple drive had transformed into something far deeper, something intimate and quietly powerful, and Adrian turned slightly in his seat, his expression soft, thoughtful, and almost vulnerable, and for a moment, neither spoke, the silence carrying the weight of shared confessions, glances, and unspoken emotions, and Sophia felt a flutter in her chest as the reality of parting edged closer, the finality of the ride looming, but still, the air between them was charged with tenderness and something unspoken, a delicate connection that neither wanted to end, and then Adrian spoke, voice low and sincere, "Thanks for listening today, Sophia." Really listening. Not just pretending, not just polite conversation, and Sophia's heart swelled, a warmth spreading through her chest, because she realized that in this small, fleeting moment, she had mattered to him in a way few others did, that her presence, her quiet attention, had been meaningful, and she wanted to say more, to tell him that the connection she felt was mutual, that his openness had touched her in ways she hadn't expected, that she, too, had felt the stirring of emotions she could not yet name, but words felt fragile, delicate, and inappropriate in the shadow of reality, so she smiled gently, a small, sincere gesture that spoke volumes, and Adrian noticed, his own lips curving slightly, a soft acknowledgement of what they both felt. And as the car stopped in front of his house, the engine ticking as it cooled, a hush fell over them, the hum of the city fading, leaving only the quiet intimacy of two hearts that had met in an unexpected space, a moment suspended in time, and he opened the door, stepping out into the soft light, and she felt an ache of longing, a tug of emotion she could neither resist nor act upon, because stepping into his world meant navigating boundaries, expectations, and social rules. Yet the pull between them was undeniable, gentle but persistent, like a quiet current beneath a calm surface, and Adrian turned toward her, glancing back, eyes soft, almost hesitant, and said, "I hope we can talk like this again sometime," and Sophia felt a shiver of hope and longing, a tender, delicate thrill, because she realized that even in this small request, there was a promise, a doorway left slightly ajar, an unspoken understanding that this connection was not ending with the car ride, that perhaps it was only beginning, and she nodded, voice soft, almost a whisper, "I'd like that," and in that exchange, something profound passed between them, a recognition of mutual respect, interest, and the fragile stirrings of deeper feelings, and as Adrian walked up the path to his front door, she watched him, noting the ease in his posture, the lingering glance over his shoulder, and she felt a mixture of admiration, affection, and a strange ache she could not quite define, a desire to step forward, to bridge the gap, yet understanding the importance of patience and subtlety, and as the door closed behind him with a soft click, the sound echoed in her mind, leaving her with a quiet sense of anticipation and a gentle ache that was both sweet and tender, because the encounter had left her thinking, imagining, and hoping, and as she started the car to drive home, the familiar hum of the engine seemed different, carrying with it the weight of unspoken words, the warmth of shared vulnerability, and the subtle thrill of something fragile and beautiful, something that had formed in the short span of a car ride, a connection that felt intimate yet respectful, romantic yet restrained, and she replayed their conversation, his stories, his laughter, his quiet confessions, and realized that each word, each pause, each glance had drawn her deeper, had shifted something inside her, opening her heart in ways she hadn't anticipated, and she thought about the layers of Adrian she had discovered, the loneliness, the longing, the gentle vulnerability beneath his composed exterior. And she felt a surge of empathy and affection, a desire to be near him, to understand him more, to offer comfort. And yet she also recognized the need for subtlety, for patience, for allowing the bond to grow naturally, like a flower slowly opening in sunlight, delicate, resilient, and beautiful. And as the city lights blurred past on her drive home, she noticed the subtle reflection of her own emotions, the way her heart had become entangled with his in quiet, understated ways, a tender awareness of feelings she could not yet name, but that were real, alive, and pulsing gently in her chest. And she imagined the next time they would meet, the next conversation, the next shared moment, and her mind raced with possibilities, with the gentle thrill of anticipation, the hope that what had begun as an ordinary drive could blossom into something meaningful, intimate, and emotionally profound. And she realized, with both excitement and a soft ache, that life could change in unexpected ways, that hearts could meet in the smallest spaces, that connection could form in moments of honesty, empathy, and shared vulnerability. And she felt a quiet gratitude, a warmth that spread from her chest to her fingertips, a delicate hope that this bond, fragile yet undeniable, could grow, deepen, and linger, leaving an imprint on both their lives, a gentle promise of what might come. And as she navigated familiar streets on her way home, she thought about the evening sky, the way twilight blended into night, the soft glow of streetlights illuminating her path, and realized that the beauty of what had happened was not in grand gestures, not in dramatic declarations, but in the quiet moments, the shared stories, the subtle glances, the soft, unspoken acknowledgement of hearts recognizing each other. And she felt a sense of anticipation, a gentle thrill, knowing that the story was not over, that the connection they had formed in a single car ride was only the beginning of something tender, emotional, and profoundly human, a delicate dance of hearts waiting for the right moments to unfold. And as her home came into view, she parked the car, her hands resting on the wheel, taking a deep breath, feeling the lingering warmth of the shared experience, the quiet excitement of what might come. And a soft smile touched her lips, because she knew that one unexpected conversation had changed everything, had opened her eyes, her heart, and her mind to a side of Adrian she had never known. And though the night would end, the emotions would linger, tender, powerful, and beautifully alive. A promise of future conversations, deeper understanding, and perhaps, in time, something even more meaningful. As she stepped out of the car and looked back toward the street, imagining the quiet possibilities of connection, the gentle unfolding of hearts, and the subtle, lasting impact of a single, extraordinary drive that had revealed not just the humanity of another, but the capacity for empathy, affection, and quiet romance in her own heart, leaving her with a soft, lingering hope that some encounters, however brief, could change everything forever.